Hello, travelers. This is a trigger warning that this episode contains discussion of attempted suicide and a suicide. If you or someone you know needs help, you can dial 988 from any cell phone, and that is a suicide prevention and help hotline. Please seek help because there is someone out there who cares.
I'm author Mark Muncy.
And I'm author Erika Lance.
And this is Eerie Travels. Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers.
How are you?
I'm good. You know, it's been busy. It's been busy for both of us.
It's like nonstop, right?
Yeah, I feel like we just finally got to sit down, but we don't get to sit down for long, do we?
Nope, we are on the road to Mothman.
Yes, it's exciting.
I am so excited for that. And we have been on the road literally for a while now, so
we have. It's, thank you listeners for enduring all of our travel episodes and things like that where we're traveling all over the place.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting, and it didn't help that I had to move in the middle of all this. So.
Well, if you're going to show off about it, that's fine.
Oh, well, it is what it is. At least now my driver's license is not, my picture is not 200 years old, and when I was in another body. So
you mean when you were in a body that didn't have white hair?
Yeah, exactly. Now now I look like Halloween Santa Claus because I made sure to wear a spooky Hawaiian print for this one. Where my last one was from when I was like in my 20s. So how do they just keep using those same pictures? I'm like, really?
Yeah, no, what's funny about it to me is they allowed me to actually retake my picture. She's like, I'll take it a few times if you want. And I'm like, she goes, yeah. And then she took one. And I look terrifying. I look intimidating and terrifying. And I'm like, okay, let's keep that one. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because I look like a serial killer. Just like, keep it. Let's do it. I was
going to say, that's the Erika I know and love. So.
Exactly. So I was like, then she's like, are you sure? I'm like, I don't care. It's a stupid driver's license picture. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, so, I'm going to flash it whenever an officer tells me, and I don't care what I look like in that.
Exactly. At those moments, we don't care. But part of my busyness, we get to talk about a little bit today is I went over the pond, as it's said.
Across the pond, yes.
Across the pond. And I got the opportunity, which I've been waiting for since 2020, to visit Ireland and Scotland.
Yes, the homes of my people, yes.
Yeah, so I actually am of Irish descent. My dad told me kind of a funny story. So he sat me down. I want to say it was about 4 years ago now. We were at his breakfast nook in Minnesota. And in Minnesota. And he said, don't get me started. If you get me started on that, I'm going to have my accent.
It'll be there for the rest of the day. That's me with my Southern when it gets going. So
yeah, exactly. We'll out accent each other and people will just shut off this episode. They'll be like, I'm not listening to this crap. But so he sat me down and it was at breakfast and I was having coffee and he's like, I've got something to tell you. And it sounded terrifying, like when your dad sits you down, I've got something to tell you. And I was like, really? What? And he's like, he reached across the table and put his hand on my arm and leaned in and said, we're not Dutch. Now, so my family name is a Dutch name. And I was like, okay, now keep in mind though, I feel like a lot of Americans and a lot of people probably around the globe feel the same way, but you end up not, I don't do a lot with my heritage and that may be a good thing or a bad thing, but being Dutch was because my last name was Dutch. It's not like I had Dutch family or I was doing anything like that. It was just, my last name was Dutch. And which is not my last name anymore, but it was growing up.
Right.
So I was like, okay. And he goes, we were actually Black Irish. And just to clarify the easy version of Black Irish, is when England came to conquer Ireland, they actually put walls around the cities, and everybody outside of those walls was considered Black Irish. So they had the royalty or monarchy or whatever you want to call it, the higher end people inside the walls, and then they had everybody else was outside the walls. And if you watch the movie Gangs of New York, one of the gangs is Black Irish. Like, that's it anyway. So apparently my dad's great great grandfather, so 3 great greats from me, when they came to this country, and they were, because when you immigrated before, it was nowhere near the immigration process that it is now.
No.
With
But
all
still,
of it.
you had to just list where you were from.
Yeah, you just said, this is where we're from, and this is our name, and this is my name. You didn't have, we were just talking about driver's licenses.
Yeah.
You didn't have to
forms of
produce
identification
one.
and testimonials from 16 friends that know you live in this location.
Exactly. And the 16
You have to do this within 30 days or you're against the law. So
yeah, but back then you just said, this is who I am. So apparently my family immigrated over and said their name and the name, which which I'm not going to get into, maiden name, and then said they were Dutch. And that's how it went, even though they didn't speak.
Yep.
They spoke Irish, they spoke Gaelic, like so he said
My
to me,
family did
and I
a
go,
similar thing. So yeah. My family were from my mother's side of the family were from Syria and Hungary, and they were Romani, and when they got to America they didn't want to be that, so they changed their name too. So
like you do. So so he's telling me this, he's very serious, he's never been doing Dutch things either, so whatever. And then he says to me, we're Black Irish. And I went, well, that makes sense, because before these gorgeous silver locks that are courtesy of my father as well, I had auburn hair naturally, like a dark auburn hair. And I have a ton of freckles. So it kind of makes sense that I go that way versus the Dutch. I'm not saying they don't have auburn hair, but generally that's not the color schema of a Dutch person. So he told me this. Anyway, apparently our family name was Fox.
Oh, nice.
That was our family name. So when I went over to Ireland, and I want to talk a little bit about everything I saw over there, but I was able to find some things that have our logo, which is a sort of like a lion, a red lion on it is Fox. So that is my family name. And I went over there to claim my heritage. Not really. But I do own a small piece of property in Scotland and Ireland that a friend bought for me. So I was able to put on my travel documents that it was Lady Erika.
Yes.
Because technically I'm a lady. And I don't know if you know this, but one of the things that they do over there is there are some properties, in order to save the property and make sure it doesn't get bulldozed or used for anything, they sell small sections of it, whether it's a foot section. One of them is a foot and one of them's like 5 by 5 feet, which you can go there and take a picture on your piece of property. They tell you where it is. But they do this because then they keep the natural habitat of the area. So you're buying a piece of land, you agree that you're not going to build or do anything, but it basically saves the land.
Yeah. And then Scotland has that wonderful roaming law, where as long as you close the gate behind you, don't mess with any of the crops, don't mess with any of the animals, you can literally just walk anywhere and not get shot, which on anybody's property, as long as you're, like I said, you close the gates behind you and don't mess with anything. So
yeah, no, it's interesting. So when we went over to Ireland, we flew into Dublin, and we drove a little south of there to a place called the Powers Court. So there is a huge property called the Powers Court Estate, and it is absolutely beautiful. It has a castle on it.
Nice.
It was one of the places that, and it has the most fascinating heritage, to be honest with you, but it has these beautiful gardens. It has a huge waterfall. It has all these like stations on it where there are cannons to protect this property. And it's truly like, if you watch Bridgerton or any of these things, it's literally what you think of when you think of castles and stuff over there. it's just beautiful. And then on top of that, to make my life even more complete, are we ready for this?
Ready.
They have a distillery, a whiskey distillery.
Oh, there you go.
So they found there's an underground lake under it, and they found this thing, and they found an old mill. And so basically, when the property was purchased and then repurchased, and it has a whole history of all the royalty that was in it and how the English took over, and then the English gave it back, and then the English took over again, and stuff like that. And then it's back now to Ireland as a whole. There's a president of Ireland. I had to look it up. But it has this amazing whiskey distillery there. And so you can go and do a whiskey tour, which for the record, I absolutely did.
Of
Right.
course.
Like you do. And so anyway, it's just this absolutely beautiful state and stuff. So we stayed there for a few days, including having high tea, which if I learned something that I didn't know. Did you know that there is a difference between high tea and afternoon tea and all of those things?
All those things. There's a big difference.
Yes. And the difference has to do with the food selection that you
Right.
get. Because if you do afternoon tea and stuff, you could get a more hearty food selection versus
Right.
little tea sandwiches and stuff like that the other ones have. So I don't know. Interesting things you learned. But I will tell you, I had some very interesting experiences on this estate, because when you have an estate that's old, guess what you have?
I would assume what some would call spirits.
Yes, you have dead people. So not in the form of zombies, but I will say I had a couple interesting encounters walking around in the gardens and stuff like that. And there was one area that's down in the gardens, which I decided to nope and turn around and walk the other direction. But they had this little place, and I'm going to upload pictures for the travelers to see when this episode goes live. I will upload a bunch of my pictures so you guys can see some of the stuff that happened there. And I did a couple of videos for the travelers too. But one of the things that was really interesting is they had this little sort of built cave that has this giant piece of quartz when you walk in, and it's cooler when you walk in. It's open, but it's like a crevice, I guess, a crevasse. And when you walk in and you touch this piece of marble, it's colder than everything else by a good 10-15 degrees. It's out in the open, but it's colder. But there is also something very much that stays in there. It wasn't mean, but it was there, and like, cool, thank you for visiting. And I was like, cool, don't come with me. Cool. But one of the things we went and saw too was a thing called the Sunken Gardens.
Not in St. Petersburg, Florida.
No.
Okay.
It's a sunken statue gardens.
Oh, very nice.
It was so cool. And one of the things that I didn't realize when we got to the place was it was a meditative area. Like you can walk through and have meditation, and they have these like wood-built meditation benches that you can sit on or lay on to meditate and just have a time. But they had these statues that were immense statues that had been brought in. There's a whole story of this place, which we'll post a link in the thing. But what had drawn me to it was there was like a guy in a lake, right? So I'm not explaining this well, but there's a guy in a lake, and it looks so creepy. And when you get there, it is super duper creepy.
No relation to Jason Voorhees, though.
Yeah, like there is one of the entrances you walk through, and I'll post a picture of this, looks like a vagina with a snake on it
Very
that's
nice.
got thorns inside of it.
Oh, no symbolism there at all.
There is so much symbolism on this thing. But I will tell you, you're walking through and it's absolutely beautiful, Mark. Peaceful. You walk through all these areas that have these trees and the breezes whistling through the trees and stuff. And I could see why people would go there to get deep in their thoughts. It's absolutely beautiful. It's about to walk the statue walk is about 2 miles, 2.5 miles or something like that. So you need to be prepared to walk if you go there. And they ask for a donation. So there's this older Irish gentleman with his perfectly behaved dog sitting there asking for it's a $10 donation to go walk through there. But I mean, if I told you some of these statues are probably 25, 30 feet tall. Like,
yeah, that's when some people talk about Michelangelo's David, they always assume it's this normal size statue. When you get there, it's a beast. So, and
it is, but the weather held. I went and saw a place called the Plowboys, which could be taken many, many ways.
Can be, yeah.
But it was Irish music. So it was a fun Irish, like, it's a tourist attraction, I'll say, but the people who owned it, it's owned by it's a gastropub. It's been there forever and a day. It's owned, and the people who perform are the owners of it.
Nice.
And they do Irish dancing. So you can just go there, but they have a show where you get to see Irish dancing, Irish music, all of this stuff. So that was an absolute ton of fun to go see that and, experience true Irish music and dancing. And I also am firmly convinced that me and you should take up river dancing.
Oh yeah, we can almost pull that off, except I have bad knees, so
Well, that and the fact that me and you are not built for river dancing under any circumstances.
I love the shoes they wear for those. They're similar to tap shoes, but a little more. Let's make some noise, and I love them.
Yeah, and it's amazing to watch, but watching them keep their back straight, I'm like,
Now, if they could do that wearing your fake Dutch heritage shoes, maybe you can.
I've been to the Netherlands. Those shoes are I don't understand. That's what I'm going to say.
It's a thing. Wooden shoes people, look it up. So.
Anyway. Exactly. Oh my gosh. But it was a ton of fun. So we went to that. We went and saw the Blarney Castle. It was raining really heavily.
Now, Blarney Castle has some ghosts.
Blarney Castle does have some ghosts. I did not let them try to have kiss. So you can kiss the Blarney Stone, but a lot of people don't realize that you will if you try to kiss the Blarney Stone, you have to do it upside down.
Yeah, you got to hang from underneath. And pull yourself up to it. It's pretty crazy. I've done it.
And yeah, you know me, I'm 6 feet tall, not a delicate little flower. There was nobody I was trusting to hold me upside down to do that.
I did it when I was 17. So yeah, I couldn't imagine trying to do that now. So
exactly. So maybe if I was 17 again, I'll do that. It's something
17 and in my fencing form. So no.
Yeah, no, I was going to say 17 and in running form. Yeah, I could. Yes, let's do that. Right now, I'm like, you are not hanging me upside down for anything.
Travel tip, Eerie travelers. If you're going to kiss a Blarney Stone, do it while you're young.
Yeah, well, either that or just be in shape when you go and be ready to trust people to do that. So
I have some very strong friends.
Exactly. So when I traveled, I went from Dublin down to Wicklow. Another interesting thing I saw, and these are just like travel things. So thank you people in this episode for listening to our travel things, but they have a swan sanctuary.
Oh yeah, you sent pictures of that. That was wonderful.
Sent you pictures because I know how much Carrie absolutely loves.
Yes, you went crazy about those. Yeah.
Okay, so let me explain the swan sanctuary because it's something. It is a stretch of beach that has swans on it. That's it. It's not caged. It's not gated. It's just an area that has these swans. And if you've never seen a swan up close, again, they are gigantic birds, right? But they're much like geese. So I'm just going to warn everybody, if you've never encountered a goose before, or geese, multiple, which is even more terrifying, they can clamp onto you and not let go.
Yep.
when I was 12 years old, got about a dinner plate sized bruise on a thigh from a goose grabbing me from a farm I was living on. And that is many other stories. That's all I'm going to say. But I've seen how vicious they are, and they're not easy to get to let go. So
No, not at all.
But these swans were just there having fun. We walked up. I was like less than 2 feet from one of them, just being very polite, you know, as you should be with any of these kind of situations. But this gentleman came up with a stroller, and on this stroller, he had 2 little kids, but on this stroller, he had a bag of bread. Now, I want to point out the bread wasn't opened. He was just walking up, and literally every swan head poked up. They were all sleeping, turned.
They know.
And before he even had it open, they were all like walking over there, but there were a bunch of seagulls. Had I known this was going to happen, I would have video recorded it.
Of course.
It was like the psychic understanding of swans to get up and all walk over there. And they were very polite. They didn't grab at the kids. They didn't do it. They stood there, but they were like, yes, please give us bread. Yeah. So that was really kind of fascinating to be a part of and watch.
Peas, but bread is good.
Yeah. So we did that. And then, so we went from Dublin down to Wicklow, which is south of there, to the Powers Court, went to the Swan Sanctuary, went around the bottom coast, and ended up stopping in Cork for a little bit. Let me tell you a huge thing that was very funny to have a conversation about. So a lot of countries have wine. I know you're not a big drinker, but they have wine. I am not a wine aficionado, traveler, so don't get excited about telling me about some Bordeaux or some shit like that, because I have no idea. And I love me a $10 bottle of 19 crowns.
Hey, I was a sommelier at Trader Joe's for a few weeks. I can deal with this. So.
Okay, so Mark may be way better at this than I am, but I said, what kind of wine do they have in Ireland? This is a trick question, Mark. Do you know the answer to this?
The answer would be probably not much, because
there have been wineries that have opened, but here is the problem. There's a bunch of fruit wine. You can get fruit wine from there, but they don't actually have Irish wine with grapes and stuff like that.
Right. It's not the environment for that.
No, it's not. But I was Googling because I was like, there's got to be Irish wine, trying to prove my travel companions wrong and me right, which, you know, when you go on a power mission to prove everybody wrong, that's going to end well for you, right?
I'm familiar.
Yeah. So I went to Cork because I was told that in Cork, there was a winery with Irish wine. That was lies and slander. That was not the case. It had closed down because, and I quote, it was garbage.
Yes.
So, and every place that I talked to about Irish wine either said it doesn't exist unless it's berry wine, or it's garbage, don't drink it.
Right.
So, traveling all the way through Cork, we ended up in Galway, which is a lot more tourists end up in Galway, and I can see why, than Dublin. So Galway's on like the opposite coast from Dublin on the ocean. And it was a ton of fun. We went and had some amazing food. There's a great shopping district. I got one of the little Irish rings from, you know, with the heart and the hands and all that, from the original jeweler that created those rings.
Oh, very nice. The Clondalk rings,
yes,
or whatever. Yeah.
And
made famous by Buffy and Angel.
Exactly. But there are apparently certain ways you're supposed to wear this ring to mean certain things. So I suggest people look this up before they put these rings on, because depending on the finger and the direction you're pointing the ring can mean very different things to the Irish folk. But, and whether or not you're single and stuff like that and looking, that's why I'm saying you should look this up.
It's
but
the balls at the Villages all over again.
Let's start a trend there. No, just kidding. Yep. So we ended up going to Galway. We had a ton of fun. All these places, by the way, have ghost stories, and they all have ghost tours, and they all have, there is so much history. And, you know, one of our favorite comedians, Susie Eddie Izzard, who's going to come up again in this story, said, it's England, it's Ireland, there's castles everywhere. They're not joking. There are castles and remnants of castles everywhere. Like there's a castle here, there's a castle there. So it was beautiful seeing a lot of the architecture and stuff like that. And if you're into that, perfect place for it. But then from Galway, we flew over to Edinburgh.
Hey.
Yes, Scotland.
Now you're in the land of my people.
Yes, now I'm in the land of Mark's people. They declared that when I landed too. They're
I'm related to everyone in Macbeth except Macbeth. But Macduff and all the guys who get killed and the guys who killed them, I'm related to all of them. So Duncan, the king, gets killed at the beginning. Yeah, he's a cousin. So
well done for inbreeding. That's all I'm going to say there, Mark. So, so we landed in Edinburgh. A couple of my friends from the UK joined us, which was wonderful. We took trains there, which is everybody takes a lot of public transport in these countries. And driving, like when we were talking to a girl in Cork in Ireland, and we were talking about driving to Galway, which is 3.5 hours, she was like, oh yeah, that's going to be my day tomorrow. And I'm thinking, me and you drive like 14-hour days to get places. I'm like,
yeah. No, they that's one of those things, 14 hours for them, they could be in 12 different countries. So and that's it's true, because I did that.
No, it's true. It's just anyway, so talking to them, excuse me, tickle in my throat. But so we went to Edinburgh and we decided to walk to Edinburgh Castle. Now, let me just say that your friend Erika here is in getting better shape than she has been for a little while, but it's a lot of up. There's a lot of walking up.
Yeah,
there's a lot of
I
stairs.
didn't realize what you did. Yeah, no, I did that when I was 17 or 18. I don't remember, because I did 2 trips to Europe in 2 years, and they blur together. I don't remember which one was which.
Well, this is a very haunted area, by the way. And there was a festival going on called Fringe, which has all these street performers. So there are thousands and thousands of people in Edinburgh that aren't normally there. So if you're going to travel over there, travelers, I suggest you make sure, if you don't want that kind of ruckus, that you look at what time, because there was a ton of different kinds of performers and stuff, which was amazing to see some of it, but it was very, very crowded.
And I known you there, one of our friends of the show was performing Pipsy the Clown. She's a Renaissance Festival fellow from Bay Area Renaissance Festival days, and she does up there. She's a sword swallower and does a kind of a sideshow show, and she's pretty epic. And she was there, and this was her first time performing at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and she loved it. So
oh wow, well, I'm sorry I missed her. Next time, because there will be a next time. Walking through the castle there in Edinburgh, super haunted, super creepy. Had to keep telling things. There's a ginormous graveyard too. So Edinburgh Castle's up on a cliff. So we did that for a day, walked around, drank in pubs. Oh, I do want to mention, I forgot to mention, in Ireland, the Guinness tastes different in Ireland because it's from Ireland. And I'm not like some weird thing, but I don't like bottled Guinness or canned Guinness or even Guinness on tap over here. But I tried it over there because I tend to like stout beers, and it was amazing. So very different beer thing. But so we went to some pubs, had some drinks, watched some performers, did all that stuff. And then the next day, because we only had a couple days in Scotland, we went over to Glasgow, which is very, very different from Edinburgh. So we went there. I'm going to tell my highlight in a minute. We walked around, but it was very much like a smaller New York City in a way, like very bustly, very industrial, very shoppy. Like it's not like you're going and getting to see a lot of the like little shop. It's just not like that. It's very
where the jobs are.
Yeah. But there is another castle over there that was pretty epic to go see, which is Stirling Castle. So I think that's right.
A lot of history there.
Yes.
That's where my clan Campbell comes into play. So
yes. And they had one of the most amazing graveyards I've ever seen. I will post some pictures. They have a ginormous angel in the middle of their graveyard that is an angel statue dedicated to all of the war heroes and stuff like that. But the history of all of this, and it's you get to see a lot of, you know, the military history in that particular castle. But I will say, you know, Scotland right now is run by England, you know, like that's, you know, the United Kingdom.
They voted to stay that way. They voted to stay that way. It was close.
Yeah, no, they keep trying to vote to segregate. But what's interesting is the history is not, at least the history tours in those two castles, and this is my personal view of it. It was very much told as if it's from English lens and not a Scottish lens. Right. And you know, even my friend who was from the UK was like, yep, there's a lot that we're not proud of, but it's not said that way, which was very, very interesting. So, but walking through these castles, I came to the conclusion of two things. One, they're super haunted, so I had to be very careful to keep reminding them they don't get to come home with me. And two, having somebody my size, like 6 feet tall and non-delicate little flower walking up these staircases and stuff, I'm like, everybody who lived here had to be like 4 feet tall, because like there is just no way. There is no way. And you get the sense, and I know you want to jump in, you get the sense, because we were there in one of the castles in the evening time, like it was starting to get dark, and you see how ridiculously dark this would have been. Like you take for granted street lights and things like that, or lights from a window, because you would have candlelight, or you know, a fireplace is lit, but you wouldn't have a lot of light in these places. So skulking around a castle, it's so dark. Anyway, what were you going to say, Mark?
No, I was just going to say that, you know, that's one of the things we forget about is how tall we are compared to what, you know, they were then. And if you, some of the better museums will have a, you know, here's a typical Spanish conquistador, and you're standing next to it and you're thinking, oh, well, you know, what's the, you know, what scale is that? And they're like, oh no, that's 1-to-1. And you're like, oh wow, he doesn't even come up to my shoulder. But you know, and that's, you know, that was the way it was then. So
yeah, no, absolutely. So and then when we flew home, but here is the highlight of my Scottish thing, which maybe shouldn't be the highlight, but to me it was. So I was walking down a road in Glasgow, and no, in Edinburgh, and just looking in the storefronts, everything, and I turn and I look and I see it's Edinburgh gin, and I see a bottle of gin, and on that bottle of gin is Susie Eddie Izzard, who is my favorite comedian ever, actor, actress, everything. But I turn on and look, so I make a beeline. Everybody else is still walking because they don't realize, like, I've turned and jumped into this store, and I walk in and I'm like, is this gin from, you know, Eddie Izzard? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to get a bottle. And all I saw was their display, because their stuff was, you know, more towards the back, but I didn't even see it. And I'm like, where can I get a bottle? And they're like, well, we actually have some signed bottles for super fans. I lost my shit.
Yeah.
I was so excited. So Edinburgh Gin has some amazing gin. They have all different kinds, and like, I love gin, but they had one with rutabaga, and which was amazing. They have one that's very kind of salty, which I was surprised about. Like, it was a seaweedy, salty kind of gin. Anyway, I'm going to put a link in the thing, but they had these bottles signed by Susie Eddie Izzard, and I got one, and it was such a favorite moment, because it was purely on accident, and I just adore them so much. So anyway, that is my travel stories from overseas. Yes.
So no paranormal encounters per se, but feelings.
Oh no, there was some things. I mean, if I'm being honest, it was I ran into I was walking up a staircase. So Mary Queen of Scots, who does not have a great history, she ended up being with a person. They think she was with they think all of this, but apparently she started like hey babying with one of her captains of the guard or something like that while she was married to this other guy who was a total idiot butthead. And they actually ended up going up to her quarters, these men grabbing this guy who was in the dining room, and then taking him and killing him basically in front of her. But I was walking up the stairway to go see this situation, and there was something at the top of the stairs. And I was like, this is part of where, and then I suddenly felt very claustrophobic. And I'm like, no, I don't like this. It was very mad, whatever it was. But then it turned and went into that dining room. And it was this little adjacent, and this is one of the rooms where you really seeing the beds and stuff. I'm like, I could never sleep on any of these beds. But that was one where I definitely saw it. When you walk through the meditative garden, there are other things walking through the trees with you there, which I believe are fae, because they have a lot of stories of the Kelpies.
Oh yeah.
And other fae, and that is a lot of the history, as far as like they have a ton of cryptids and stuff, and we can do another episode on that. But there's definitely a lot to the fae that are there, and when you walk through the wilder areas, you can feel them. You can feel them around you, something there in the trees with you. And it's interesting because as you walk, there are certain spots where you're walking where it goes very quiet and very still. Not bad, but just very still. So lots of fun places to travel, but that was my fun experience of going over to my, and I quote, homeland.
Yeah. No, that's pretty epic. Well, the Stirling Castle was I had just found I had Clan Campbell. My mother's maiden name was Campbell, but it had always been the family story that they changed their name, when they came over from Europe. But apparently one of the Nazarmans married a Campbell, so that's why I do have all that heritage there too. So it's fascinating. So
that's very cool. Cool.
That is where all the history comes from. So yeah, and
all of the history.
Yeah. So but I'm glad you had fun, and I'm glad you got home safe, because we had to turn around and go somewhere else right after that.
We did, and we're going to take a break though and come back and talk about where we went. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Wonderbar. We'll be right back, travelers.
Eerie, Appalachia. Gear up for a frightful jaunt into the darkest reaches of the ancient Appalachians. Folks deep within the Appalachian hollers lean close to the campfire to share stories of the inexplicable with hushed awe. Monsters rumbling in the hills, strange lights darting through the pitch black night sky, horrible occurrences almost ineffable in their bizarre tragedy. Tall tales, you might say. Tell that to the Flatwoods monster in Braxton County, West Virginia, or the Goat Man of Louisville. Look into his humanoid eyes and let him know you don't believe. And what of those apparitions in Mammoth Cave's Corpse Rock, or the Satan spawn known as the Jersey Devil? How do you respond when confronted by these mysteries? From the metaphysical energy that swirls near Serpent Mound in Ohio to Point Pleasant's Mothman legacy, Mark Muncy and Carrie Schultz explore the dark history lurking in the shadows of Appalachia. Read by Mark Muncy, author and experts on strange folklore with appearances on shows such as Ancient Aliens, The Curse of Robert the Doll, and many, many more.
Greetings, mortals. and others. I'm Dick Terhune, the voice from hell. I work with haunted attractions all over the US, Canada, and Europe to increase audiences and enhance their experience with highly effective commercials, narrations, animatronic character voices, whatever your dark heart desires. Let me help you do more, scare more, profit more. Find out more at Voice from Hell on Facebook and at voicefromhell.com.
So, Mark, we left it on a cliffhanger to tell them where we went right after I got back from.
Literally, what was it, a day later? Because we gave you a little time to recover.
You gave me no time to recover.
Oh,
it was a day. I got back, did some laundry, then jumped over there.
Yeah, and we drove a good distance to our wonderful con that we have been at now for a few years. And that is DragonCon, one of the. If it's not the largest, it's got to be really freaking close to the largest.
I don't know if it's the largest when it comes to number of people there, because I actually heard a rumor that was somewhat confirmed that they limited the amount of tickets they sold.
Yeah.
Because last year, I think they had 85,000 people that were ticket holders. This year, I think they allowed 70,000 people to be ticket holders.
That was just for the 5-day passes, but they allowed more for the 1 days.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I'm just saying that I think it's a con where they sold 70,000 5-day passes. Like people go for the long haul.
DragonCon is the only one bigger, and maybe New York Comic Con, but those are the top three definitely. So San Diego gets all the buzz, but these guys make San Diego seem small.
Yes, but I also think it's very different because not that San Diego Comic-Con and some of the other cons don't have panels and things, but DragonCon really highlights doing activities. Being a part of cosplay is huge at DragonCon.
Yeah. And there's a contest every night.
Yes.
And then they have individual theme contests, and then they have the photo ops where it's with all the themes get together, and we saw the Star Wars get together, and then my favorite was the Buc-ee's get together where all the Buc-ee's fans got up on the steps, and I was like, wow, that's not something I expected to see. What my favorite in that Buc-ee's group though was a Winter Soldier with the Buc-ee's logo on his shoulder instead of the Russian symbol, so it was, or the cap symbol now, so it was Buc-ee the Buc-ee's, which
oh my gosh.
Yeah, that the nerd in me exploded on that one. So yeah, that was great. So
of course it did, and we all know you would have been there if you had known about it.
If I had done my research more. I was more busy prepping for panels and our live podcast episodes. So,
yes,
of which only one got recorded somehow.
Well, I'm going to blame you, and just kidding. Technology can be an asshole sometimes, people. That's the thing.
When you're borrowing hotel Wi-Fi and such, and it was and when you have 100 and some odd thousand people all using the same Wi-Fi at the same time, it can be issues. So
yeah, no, there can be issues, but we need to thank all the fans that came out to see us.
So many. We did one panel that was a live broadcast for us, and it was crazy. We had our wonderful friends Tampa J and Chris the Girl sat right in the front row and filmed portions of it, and it is already up on their vlogs from that day. If you haven't followed them on YouTube, please do. We got more with them coming up soon.
Yes.
They go to a lot of haunted attractions and a lot of haunted locations, and Chris does spooky shopping, so you'll know where to find your that plush pumpkin that you're looking for. So
yeah, or what, didn't Owl Going Back find a gigantic bat or something?
Yeah, a giant bat at Home Depot or one of those, Home Depot or Lowe's, that was it was like a bat skeleton, and it was like 5 feet tall, so it's pretty epic. So
oh my gosh, it's so amazing. But
anyway, DragonCon, yeah, that's we were part of
DragonCon.
We were part of several tracks, which you were talking about, where they encourage you to get involved, and the tracks are themed. So there's like a science fiction track, there's a young adult fiction track, there's a fantasy urban fantasy track, not to be confused with the fantasy literature track, the science fiction track, the military science fiction track, and then horror has a track, which was sponsored by our good friends at Netherworld, which we got to see them. They were pretty epic. And then the Extract, which was based on the X-Files, not what I was very disappointed when I found out.
You know, I knew you were when you walked in and they didn't have more X's.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wait a minute. I was thinking, well, maybe it was just, like Midnight Cowboy and, a couple others from the 70s, but, Flesh Gordon. But no, it was, but that was the paranormal track. And they invited us and they gave us a chance to host our full podcast. And then we did another episode later where I did, told you about some holler monsters, and that one's coming up soon. So.
Yeah, no, that one actually got recorded. So that one actually is going to air before this one does.
Oh, wow. So you probably just heard it. So
yeah, if you're listening, you heard it, our holla monsters. But that one was a ton of fun. So I think, if you are a fan of TV, movies, games, like you can't go wrong. It doesn't even matter if you're like a Disney movie fan. There's so much DragonCon for you.
And Atlanta has that huge puppet community, so they had a puppet track, and so we saw like Sesame Street stuff everywhere and Muppet stuff everywhere, and they even had classes on puppetry, which was amazing.
And they have writing classes. They have a ton of stuff.
Our good friend Jody Lynn Nye, she does a whole like a multi-day workshop, which is pretty epic.
Yeah. No, I 1,000% concur with. I think that if you get a chance, you're never going to see everything the first time you go. It's impossible. Like we did panels, like we did a little bit of adventuring, but we did a ton of panels because that's what they wanted us to do. And I think I want to touch on your favorite panel, Mark.
Oh, which one?
Didn't you do a panel on Beauty and the Beast?
Beauty and the Beast in horror and that theming, and I was part of the horror track for that one. And I have a little pet peeve when it comes to panels.
Oh, Mark, do tell us what your pet peeve is.
My pet peeve on panels is it's not, it doesn't seem to be all of them, but it does seem to be a large number of when they put more academics on the panel than people in the fields on the panel, which I get that a lot when I'm doing interviews with folklorists and stuff like that. I interview a lot of storytellers, and I interview a lot of families that have told these stories for generations, and then I'll interview some college professor who's an expert on the subject, and he will go off on a 2-hour lecture of all the little nuances and everything into this. And that's fine, but that's not what I was after when I asked him a question of how are you today? So talk about Muncy bunny trails there. But,
Muncy bunny trails.
That was that panel. We had a couple academics on it that were fixated on, because the title of the panel was Beauty and the Beast in horror. We were supposed to talk about how the Beauty and the Beast theme is so common in horror movies, and I was going to talk Creature from the Black Lagoon, King Kong, Dracula, the classic Universals, and then how that even translated into the Hammer period of Hammer horror, and how it was it was more sexualized then, and blood and all that. And then,
but what happened?
We wound up talking for 30 minutes on John Cocteau's 1940 version of Beauty and the Beast, which inspired the Disney movie. So then there was 20 minutes on the Disney movie, and a little bit of Family Opera got thrown in there. And then we talked about the Ron Perlman, Linda Hamilton Beauty and the Beast TV show. So it was, not what I signed up for, not what the audience expected, I think, too. But I still had fun. And again, that's the thing with these DragonCon panels is, these things happen. Like, let's say someone else had a panel. Would you like to discuss your panel that you had so much fun with?
So, yes. Okay. But I want to preface with this,
No, I want to preface, I still had a good time, and I think the audience still enjoyed the show. So
I think the problem with I will say, because I was in the audience, and I have a thought on Beauty and the Beast and a lot of these other kidnap the girl, keep them there, and then she falls in love situation.
Stockholm syndrome.
Is it Stockholm syndrome? And there was an audience member, like I almost brought it up, but watching how the panel was going, and especially when somebody picks a panel for them to talk about things they specifically want to, don't invite a bunch of other people, because if you
Right.
really want to talk about it, it's either that or coordinate so that you are bringing people on the panel that want to have the same discussion you want to have.
Right.
But I think my problem with the panel you were on, and then you're going to do the reverse for mine, I'm sure, was that what it said the panel was going to be and what he did was completely different. And then there was a lovely slave Leia of all ironies.
Of all ironies, yes.
Total
What I
irony.
was trying to bring up, and I kept
who-
getting shut down.
Yeah, exactly. She brought up the Stockholm Syndrome part of that, and he just completely ignored her, called on her. She said it, ignored her, and kept talking about this movie. And that was a little like, dude, not okay. Because I love Beauty and the Beast. I love the live version of it with, Emma and all of that. Luke Evans, I love that movie.
It was written as a tale for arranged marriages. This was a cautionary tale about arranged marriages. But look, he may be a beast that you're forced to marry, but he's really a nice guy if you're just nice to him and stop, and just get past the monstrous exterior. And it was a way for this was a folk tale for the old ugly landowners to get the young farm girls to fall in love with them.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous now, looking back on it, but that's what I was trying to tell. And they kept shutting it down. Finally, we got a couple of the audience members got to bring it up, and I was like, thank you.
Well, and she did, and then he kept shutting it down. And that's the only thing I didn't like, was if you're going to have a panel and you're going to ask the audience questions, be willing to hear their views of it, because what she said was legitimate. Okay, enough about that panel. Sorry. So I got asked to be on a panel, and I love the sci-fi track. And I have done tracks. Last year I did one on Ryan Reynolds, because it's Ryan Reynolds. So I got asked to do one on the Messiah complex and genre, which is where you have a Messiah type character. And I'll give an example of this, which is Star Wars. This is one they brought up, but there's some problems with how they brought it up, which was they were saying that Anakin Skywalker, aka Darth Vader, was the Messiah part of that. So if you read the description, fine and everything, but the person who put on this panel, who decided on the panel and was the moderator, went down a path about Dune, the Dune books and the Dune movie. And the problem is he spent 20 minutes talking about Dune, which is
a 45-minute panel that was supposed to cover many genres, many subjects, like mine, which was my 45-minute panel. 25 minutes of it, John Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just kept going on, but it was this gentleman, unfortunately, kind of pontificating about it and didn't really bring up some of the other books that have, or even movies that have Messiah. And then I felt like I had to spend a lot of time, because when you're on a panel, you have to politely disagree with people.
Right.
It's not an argument. You're on a panel. You can't get really whatever. So I had to find ways to very creatively go, I disagree with you on that point, because it was very much rooted in what he thought, how he thought about those things. It was a little bit of a difficult panel to be on, but I felt like I changed it up a bit near the end. What are your thoughts?
I think you salvaged it quite a bit. And honestly, it wasn't a terrible panel. And if you were a Dune fan, which, I kind of am, it was fascinating, but even I'm sitting there going, wow, this is a 40-minute panel. We're 30 minutes in and we're still talking Dune. And there's a lot of other, messiahs we need to talk about here in literature and in film. And again, these are not things you would expect, an hour-long conversation to get into everything. You're not going to get into every little minutia character and stuff like that. I was waiting for somebody to bring up Ash from Army of Darkness, but it's okay. You don't always have to bring up Bruce Campbell, but if I'm talking Messiah, I'm bringing up Bruce Campbell. But there was, but I even had to bring up Life of Brian as an audience question, because I'm like the Messiah movie that jokes about the Messiah tropes, and that hadn't been brought up. So I was very, but that's the point of a panel, is audience participation, all that. So thankfully. And we were literally racing from panel to panel to panel on that day. So, that was an exciting day. But yeah, no, I think that again, overall, both those panels, as as awkward as they were still fun to do. And I'm not completely, and I love the tracks. So the horror track, happy to be a part of it again. And
Absolutely.
science fiction track, I'd love to be part of that. I was on the Brit track because of my Legend of the Traveling TARDIS stint, so we got to talk Doctor Who and classic Doctor Who, and that was a great panel, and we had a lot of fun with that one. So that was good to bring up old school Doctor Who and all that, and we got to talk monsters, so I was in.
Very true. We shall be back next year, so if you get a chance, I heavily recommend going to Ireland and Scotland. There are so many things to see, and try the food, try everything. Tried haggis. I actually enjoy haggis. You can't get it in the US.
Yeah.
But I heavily recommend that, and go to DragonCon. Come out and see us. Come out and pop by and say hi.
Plan ahead. That's the thing. It's a 4-day con, technically a 5-day con if you go early, because it's over Labor Day weekend. And
Yeah.
I mean, they do Thursday night events, Friday night events, pre-show on Wednesday. People in costume all day, any hotel. It's in 5 hotels, so a lot of walking. There are some paths through. Again, if you plan it ahead, you can do really well. And then we made one stop on the way back that I had to introduce Erika to. One of my favorite places in Georgia, and that is Yamer Farms. I've mentioned them a couple times on the show because they are a must stop on a long road trip, and when you're not on the interstate. So
Yes. I am a fan.
yeah, I mean, it's a giant produce market, from this one family farm, although they do co-op with other family farms nearby. So, it's not all just theirs, but it's very cool. But they make fresh sandwiches with some of the best bread you'll ever have in your life. Outside
Pies,
of
little
handmade pies.
And Mark introduced me for the first time ever in my life. I have had boiled peanuts.
Yes.
And
you
I am
knew
a
about
fan.
boiling, and you knew about peanuts, but you didn't know those were two things that could go so well together. So
yeah, well, I didn't know they could go so well. So I've seen signs for boiled peanuts, and that happened to be one of those things where I'd see it and go, yeah, no, that doesn't sound good at all. I was wrong. It is great. I enjoyed it. Apparently there are good boiled peanuts and bad boiled. How do you determine that, Mark, usually?
if you drive by the side of the road, the more rundown and rustic and terrible it looks, that's probably the best boiled peanuts you'll ever have in your life. So if it says Cajun on the side, even better. So your stomach will thank you later.
Yes.
Your taste buds will thank you immediately, and then your stomach will pay you some greetings later.
No, that's so true. So that was so much fun. So
But
yes,
they do
lots
a
of travels,
huge
lots
corn
of
maze.
fun.
They do a huge corn maze for spooky season, which is coming right after Road to Mothman. So we'll have to run down there and just wander through the cornfields and see what happens.
It doesn't sound creepy at all. You know what? I'll be eating some peanuts and some pies. I'll meet you on the other side.
He who walks between the rows is waiting for us. So
exactly.
I'll have to invite my friend Malachi, and we'll do that. But gang, thank you all so much for putting up with this one. We had a lot of fun. I was so happy to hear Erika's tales, and Ireland, Scotland, come on, they are amazing places to visit. Definitely put on your travel list. I went 30 years ago, and I need to go back because it was it's her descriptions just sound amazing. And and then DragonCon, we loved you. We had a blast. X-Track, you were on point. All time. Horror track, great time. Your Stranger Things panel was a blast. We didn't even talk about that.
Oh yeah,
Stranger Things stuff ahead that we can't talk too much about. But no. Anyway, gang, thank you so much for joining us on these travels of ours, and we will like, share, subscribe as always. Vote for us at Paranormality Magazine just for their top 10 podcasts. We made top 10 again for September. So for August, we're trying to let's get it was the September issue. So let's keep it going. We want to keep the streak alive. We'd like to move up the ranks too. So go to the website and vote. And if you order anything from there, use the code TRAVELS, get yourself 10% off. And then we will see you on the other side.